Most artists spend their entire careers trying to figure out what the audience wants and then give it to them. And it makes sense because that is the logic of the industry. Find the lane that is working, occupy it, stay there, and Lana Del Rey did the complete opposite of that. She built a world so specific and so completely her own that the industry had no existing category for it. And when the world did not immediately understand what she was doing, she did not pivot or adjust or try to make herself more palatable. She just went deeper into her own thing, made the world more cinematic and the sadness more beautiful and the aesthetic more immersive, and eventually the world stopped trying to fit her into an existing category and built a new one around her instead. Welcome back to Iconic Her. Today we are studying Lana Del Rey, not the music and not the aesthetic as a surface thing, but the specific psychological portrait of a woman who understood something about identity and authenticity and the power of a fully committed creative vision that most artists in her generation were either unwilling or unable to do. And what that teaches us goes far beyond music. So with that said, let us get into it. The standard belief about Lana Del Rey is that she was raised like a socialite on daddy's money, and from solely listening to her music, you would probably think she was born in Hollywood and stayed there, navigating bright lights and parties. The reality is considerably more interesting and considerably more ordinary than that. Elizabeth Woolridge Grant grew up in Lake Placid in upstate New York, attended a Catholic elementary school, and sang in her church choir. As a teenager, she suffered from rampant alcohol abuse, forcing her parents to send her to Kent School, a boarding school in Connecticut. And then she got clean and something shifted because she worked doing community outreach with addicts after getting clean, and that specific experience of sitting with people in genuine darkness gave her something that no music school or industry mentorship could have, which was a real and unsentimentalized understanding of what human pain actually looks like from the inside. And then she spent a year on Long Island living with her aunt and uncle and working as a waitress, and her uncle taught her guitar, and she realized she could probably write 1,000,000 songs with those 6 chords. She signed with an indie label and used the $10,000 she earned from the deal to move into a New Jersey trailer park and started writing songs and performing in nightclubs under names like Sparkle Jump Rope Queen and Lizzie Grant and The Phenomena, and none of it worked. The simple, honest ballad she was writing as Lizzie Grant did not sell. And she was in her mid-20s with no traction and no momentum and a very specific artistic vision that the industry had no interest in. And then she made a decision that changed everything. She stopped trying to make the world want what she was already making and built a completely new identity around a version of herself that was more cinematic and more mythological and more deliberately constructed than anything she had done before. And Lana Del Rey was born, and the world has never been the same since. What Lana Del Rey did that nobody in her generation had done quite so completely was build a world rather than just a sound. And the distinction is important because a sound gets you listeners, but a world gets you devotees, people who do not just play your music but live inside it, who find it at specific moments in their lives and feel like it was written specifically for them. And she built that world out of very specific ingredients: 1950s and 1960s Americana, old Hollywood glamour, the kind of romance that is always slightly doomed, the specific feeling of loving something that is going to hurt you and choosing it anyway, and she wrapped all of that in a visual aesthetic so deliberate and so consistent that you can identify a Lana Del Rey image in 2 seconds without seeing her name. And the psychological principle behind what she built is something researchers call aesthetic coherence, which is the phenomenon where a creative vision becomes so internally consistent and so fully realize that it stops being a style and starts being a world you can step into, and people are drawn to fully realized worlds in a way they are simply not drawn to half-committed ones, because there is safety and beauty in a place where every detail belongs. And she created Lana Del Rey in 2010 and became famous in 2011 after a home-produced video for video games went viral on YouTube, and listeners fell in love with the 1960s sound wrapped in modern urban culture. And it was not only the sound that got the world enchanted, but her mysterious image as well. The way things started off for her in the way she was portrayed was that she was feigning emotional sensitivity, and she really did not like that. The SNL performance in 2012 is one of those cultural moments that gets studied now as an example of how wrong the world can be about something in real time, because she performed and the internet was brutal about it, and the criticism was not just about the performance, it was about her entire identity. People said the sadness was manufactured, the aesthetic was calculated, the persona was fake, and the pile-on was significant enough that most artists in her position would have retreated, softened, pivoted. done something to make the critics more comfortable, and she did none of those things. She released Born to Die, and it debuted at #2 in the United States and #1 in 11 other countries, and became the 5th best-selling album of 2012. And the lesson in that is almost uncomfortable in how direct it is, which is that the people who are most loudly critical of something genuinely original are almost always the ones who simply do not have the framework to understand it yet, and Lana Del Rey's response to that was not to provide them with a framework, but to keep building her world so completely and so beautifully that they eventually had to build their own framework around her. The thing Lana Del Rey understands that most people spend their lives missing is that how you frame your own experience is a choice, and it is one of the most consequential choices you make, because the same set of circumstances can be experienced as tragedy or as something else entirely depending on the lens you choose to see them through. And Lana chose romanticization, which means she took the sadness and the longing and the melancholy and the complicated loves, and she put them inside a frame that was cinematic and beautiful and worth sitting with rather than rushing past. And the psychological effect of that on her audience is something worth understanding, because it is not just aesthetics, it is genuinely therapeutic, because she gave an entire generation of people permission to feel their sadness fully rather than performing cheerfulness they did not actually feel. And there is a specific kind of relief that comes from art that names your exact experience and places it inside something beautiful. It makes you feel less alone and less pathological about whatever you are going through, and that relief is the foundation of the loyalty her fanbase has shown her for over a decade, because she did not just make music they enjoyed. She made music that made them feel understood at their most specific and most difficult. And the lesson this holds for every one of us has nothing to do with music. It is simply this: the things you are most tempted to hide or rush past or apologize for are often the things that are most worth sitting with and most worth turning into something, because the parts of our experience that feel most private and most shameful are almost always the parts that are most universally human, and Lana Del Rey built an entire empire on that truth. What stays with me about Lana Del Rey's whole story is that she succeeded not by finding what the market wanted and providing it, but by going so deep into her own specific vision that the market eventually came to find her. And that trajectory of building something so completely and so authentically yours that the world eventually has to reorganize itself around it is one of the most counterintuitive and most powerful things her career demonstrates, because most of us have been taught that success comes from reading the room and giving people what they already want. And she is proof that there is another way, that if you commit fully enough to something specific and real and genuinely yours, the people who needed exactly that thing will find you, and they will be more loyal than any audience you could have manufactured by trying to please everyone. And the question her story leaves each of us with is not about music or aesthetics or sadness. It is about where in your own life you are diluting yourself to be more palatable, and what would happen if you stopped. Stay iconic.